In March 2020, a metal fence appeared in the middle of the lakeside green open space shared by the German city of Konstanz and Swiss Kreuzlingen. The German Federal Police built it as part of a countrywide closing of borders policy. This took the citizens of the integrated urban region of Konstanz-Kreuzlingen by surprise. At the House of European History, we are documenting these stories and collecting related objects in our Make COVID History project. We hope that all these borders will soon become part of history again. Gruia Bădescu is a researcher of urban history and memory at the University of Konstanz. In this video, he explains the impact and how people reacted to this new border.
Well, in the first days, people were bemused, let's say. They thought it was a kind of an absurd situation and they made a bit of fun. There were also couples, for instance, who would not be able to meet, so they would just meet by the fence and they will hold hands. And I even heard people saying that the last time that this area saw a fence was after Hitler took power. Actually, a border fence between the two cities existed even as late as the 1990s. So this was indeed a fence that has about a century history, like 1878 was when it was built. But it was rebuilt higher during the Nazi times. And it was then called the fence for the Jews. It was described later in the 60s and 70s as a fence against asylum seekers. So Asylanten sound. Only after some bilateral treaties between the EU and Switzerland and the inclusion of Switzerland in the Schengen Agreement that the two cities actually removed the fence. So it was in 1999 in the west of Konstanz and only in 2006 by the lake that the fence was removed. There is actually an exhibit on the history of the border between Germany and Switzerland. And the people who used to cross this border on foot until March of 2020, they could actually read through various iterations of this history. And the end of this exhibit was the culmination, the open border, discussing how it all evolved into an open border. But the paradox is that when I took this photograph, this was already blocked. It was inaccessible. Then there's also a panel on the history of the border fence, and this is on the Wiesenstraße, which was an open street before Corona. And now, again, but ironically, this is this discussion of how the border fence was abolished is now standing by a new border fence. There is actually a fine for crossing this border, up to 3,000 euros if you're trying to jump the fence. The two cities were actually very integrated. It was an urban area where people used to walk. On the other side, the Swiss people in particular were buying things from Konstanz, which were actually cheaper. But in any case, the two cities had a feeling of belonging to the same urban area. Plus that the network, the trains, the transport was going in between Switzerland and Germany. Now there are just a few trains from Zurich that come to Konstanz, but they are actually running empty on the short section in Germany. Very few people are allowed to actually cross the border, and only people who are permanent residents or citizens, and very few people in the area have the citizenship or residence of the other. In the early days of April, the City Council of Kreuzlingen considered that the fence has failed because there were so many people coming and meeting at the fence and touching hands, not only couples but also many friends, that the Swiss part decided to erect a second fence in order to prevent people from touching each other from the other side, so to actually introduce this social distancing. So the distance between the two fences actually matched the social distancing rules of 2 meters. And this is when I started hearing people in town comparing this double fence somehow to the Berlin Wall. Soon enough, silent protests against the closing of the border started to appear. So people who organized this invited everyone who is affected or who wants to participate out of solidarity to bring something to the fence. They can bring a photo, a letter, a lock, or actually anything else that was creative. The invitation was to only bring positive items, no provocations and no rubbish. There were even society games that appeared, board games, let's call them, appeared in the space between the two fences. So for instance, this is a Germany-Switzerland team. They even posted the game rules on the fence. Families continue to come even if there were the double fences installed, so they are organizing picnics on each side of the fence, and there was quite some communication happening. This poster actually reminds us that both the Article 6 of the Basic Law for the Federal Republic of Germany as well as Article 14 of the Federal Constitution of the Swiss Confederation protect marriages and families. And they say, neither destroy families nor nationalism solve a pandemic. The fence should go away. Well, it's also it's important to say that it's not only citizens of Germany or the Swiss Confederation who live in the two cities. Both Konstanz and Kreuzlingen are quite international, and there are many of these couples that actually are separated have people coming from other EU countries or beyond, being now stuck on the other side of the border. This one asks for special regulations for couples and families. This poster actually announces that a recently married couple mourns their marriage that after 25 days fell as a victim to this fence.